regarding the Haredi, the ultra-Orthodox parties, and this possible deal. What have they said on the matter, and what are your thoughts?
It was probably the most shocking thing that I've seen since the war started, and that is saying a lot. But they piped up. Shas, under the ex-convict Ari Deri and his criminal party, Shas, and the Haredi parties under Rabbi Goldknopf, both both parties came forward to endorse this deal that was described by O'Biden. They made no mention of the deal that had supposedly been drawn up by the Israeli government, that 4-page deal, and sent to the Americans. So they endorsed surrender. They endorsed a defeat. They endorsed capitulation of this deal to support Bibi in his efforts to work this deal. They gave him his support, their support. Okay, now we have to just step back for a moment and say, why on earth did they do such a thing? For the Haredi parties and for Shas as well, I believe that their principal justification for doing this, or objective in doing this, was to bring an end to the war, so that the pressure for the Haredi draft bill would be either lessened or it would dissipate. That's number one. Number two, as a backstop to this, they felt that by basically stabbing the right wing in the back, which they've done repeatedly, by the way, but in response to that, or because of that, that they would somehow garner the sympathy or the political support of the left. Again, going back to the draft issue and the provision of subsidies for their corrupt educational / yeshiva systems. From what I understand, this was the actual thinking behind it. As far as Ari Deri is concerned, from a lot of informal polls that I've seen meaning non-scientific polls that have been taken, Shas is going to lose a lot of its younger voters over this. A lot. There's a discontinuity between the leadership of Shas and the vast number of voters that they have that support them. Basically, we're talking about the Machne Yehuda crowd.
Yes.
And these are good people.
And nowadays, some of these people, I think, are beginning to perceive that they have another option, namely Otzma Yehudit, Ben Gvir.
Correct. If you look at the polling, one of the reasons why Shas, in particular, has been so opposed to Ben Gvir and his party Otzma Yehudit is because a great many of Shas's younger voters voted for Otzma Yehudi in the last election. And the same thing could be said for the Haredi parties as well. It may not have been, the numbers may not be spectacular, but it's a trend that may become an avalanche. It's a trickle that may become a tsunami or an avalanche, whatever metaphor you want, at the next election. Now, we have to remember one other thing as far as Shas is concerned. And a lot of people may not have picked up on this. So let me just repeat this fact. Right after we apparently defeated the Iranian attack, ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, and drones, it was Shas who gave a tailwind, if you will, to the American call, the Biden administration's call for zero retaliation on our part. So I want you to think about this.
I have been thinking about this, believe me.
Okay.
And I have something to say in a moment.
That was a gratuitous initiative on their part because nobody was asking them for their opinion. But boy, Ari Derry piped up immediately and said, the Americans are right. We've won this round and we shouldn't do anything. And again, it's all about the money. That's all it is. It's all about the money.
Money and politics,
because
power, seats in the Knesset and at the cabinet.
Because neither Bibi nor the military at that point really wanted to do anything, contrary to what they said at the time. In fact, they didn't want to do anything.
Because Netanyahu never wants to do anything.
Never wants to do anything.
He always he adopts the rabbinic principle, in the halachic principle, Jewish law, shev ve'al ta'aseh adif. In other words, sitting still and doing nothing is the preferred option. Now, in certain situations in the Torah and the halakha and Jewish law, that is the preferred option. Rather than being proactive, sometimes doing nothing is the correct choice. But for a leader of a nation to choose that as a general rule of thumb, as a cardinal principle of policy and action, if that's the case, then you know you've got a big problem.
Right. So, in conclusion, as far as the Haredi parties are concerned, it's very clear. Well, in terms of both parties, let me say this: the Shas hierarchy and the Haredi parties.
When you say Haredi parties, you mean Degel Torah, Agudat Yisrael.
Correct.
Yes.
Correct. That as far as their objective was in issuing this statement of support for a ceasefire and basically a surrender, they feel that if the war ends, the pressure for the Haredi draft bill will dissipate. It's a serious miscalculation on their part. In fact, it's beyond a miscalculation. It's a blunder on their part because they will have sacrificed our security on the altar of their sectarian needs. And their needs won't even be satisfied in the final assessment of the situation. Because at the end, when this whole war is over, the forces driving the Haredi draft bill forward will be just as strong as they have previously been. And they don't seem to get this at all. They live in another world, a complete alternate reality.
I must point out, we've been here before. We've seen all of this before. We turn the clock back to Tal Shin Samech Hey, 2005. The Ariel Sharon, the criminal decision of Ariel Sharon and his corrupt associates to so-called disengage from Gaza. We see exactly what kind of disengagement that was.
Wow.
We were, of course, told this would improve Israel's security posture. Obviously, it has. The Haredi parties voted for that policy decision and that withdrawal and that disengagement and essentially fleeing from Gaza. Why? Because Ariel Sharon promised them a lot of money for the yeshivot. That's the fact. If I remember correctly, the figure was 680 million shekel. I remember it so well. I still remember the figure to this day, which is 19 years ago now. It was also reported subsequently that of that figure, they only actually received something less than 200 million in practice. In other words, most of it was never paid up. The money was not coughed up. But you can always buy these people. And the reason you can buy these people is because they do not represent authentic Torah Judaism. This has to be stated plainly, unequivocally. And even if some people don't like what I'm saying right now, we share this characteristic, Jonathan, that we don't care too much. I've made a career of being hated by some and despised by others, but also liked, I hope, by some as well, perhaps. So that's how it is. I don't mind if people don't like what I'm about to say, but these people, these political entities and the rabbis who control them and direct them do not represent authentic Torah Judaism. In fact, I will go further. I will say they are fake rabbis, and their Judaism is fake Judaism. Now, I'm not saying that because I'm anti-Haredi. I'm not. I have spoken up for the Haredim. In fact, I got into I'm sorry to say, but I have to admit it, I got into an argument with a certain family member uh, not long ago, defending the Haredi stance with regards to army service. I'm not explaining now in detail what my position on the whole on that subject is, but I was explaining this person did not understand the Haredi position. In order to argue with another position or to be
You
opposed
have
to it,
to know
not just
about it.
you have to first understand it. What is their
Correct.
motivation? What are they concerned about? At any rate, I'm not anti-Haredi, but I'm anti-fake Torah. And I don't care what kind of hat or kippah or suit or tie that the rabbi in question wears. I don't care if he says Hallel today, which is Yom Yerushalayim, which we'll discuss hopefully also in a moment, and or does not say Hallel. I don't care. It's not anti-Haredi what I'm saying now. It is a description of reality. These people are fake rabbis, and these people will always choose that position which somehow is in line. It's curious, but they're always in line with the leftist position.
Correct.
In other words, the same Haredim, when you go back to, even to Camp David or the Oslo Accords, they were in favor of these agreements. They said that
Correct.
Pikuach Nefesh, the saving of Jewish life, is paramount and comes before the land of Israel, or all kinds of other
That's
formulations,
a direct
which
quote, by the way.
of course they are. Yes, absolutely. These things are written down. Rav Ovadia Yosef wrote these things down in a famous Psak Halacha that was published, which was never retracted. Although he did learn from his mistakes, to be fair, because he was opposed, having supported Oslo, he was opposed to Sharon's disengagement from Gaza. He never went along with that.
Right.
But what I'm driving at is that these Haredi power brokers and at least some of their rabbis, many of whom, by the way, are being hoodwinked by the politicians, the Haredi politicians. They're not being given the true facts. They don't know the realities always. They're being fed
Well,
information
excuse,
by their own representatives in
excuse me
Knesset,
for
and they're
saying this.
misled.
Excuse me for saying this, but the same phenomena occurred when during the COVID scamdemic here.
You're bursting through an open door. I was about to mention, then I said to myself, you know what? Why mention that one more time,
But that
at the risk of receiving another email from another irate doctor, as I read to you last time. All right, but I wasn't going to say, but you said it for me, so okay, go ahead.
but they did it again with that.
Of course they did. And there I know for a fact, because I happen to have inside information, I know for a fact that at least certain great rabbanim of the Haredi world, for whom I have uh, amazing respect and regard, were misled. They were misled deliberately by
Correct.
people because how is Rav Kanievsky, who cannot read English, how could he have known at that time? He's no longer with us in this world. How could he possibly know the truth about
He couldn't.
that medical intervention, those injections? He
And
couldn't. He had to
according
rely on specific doctors who were sent to him by very specific people and was engineered so he would only hear that position.
the one issue I asked several Rabbonim regarding the Rav was there's a very important halachic principle of accountability. And in this case, there was none for liability, accountability for Pfizer or for the government for that matter. And where there is no liability, where there's no accountability for the adverse impact that a drug or a procedure may have, it really is problematic to endorse it at that point, unless, the last guy to come in was sent by interested parties to schmooze and to obfuscate the obvious and to just, for pikuach nefesh, we have to do
Now,
this.
precisely this kind of reasoning, and when I spoke of fake Judaism, non-authentic Torah Judaism, they represent themselves to be the authentic. They claim to be the authentic representatives of Torah Judaism, but they are not, because frequently their views are skewed for all kinds of um, extraneous and sometimes downright nefarious reasons, as we just mentioned with regards to Sharon's disengagement from
It's
Gaza
called
and their
corruption.
voting. Yeah, it's called corruption, and it's called misleading your own rabbinical leaders,
Right.
and thus engine what that evil
Could I
individual
could I
whose
just mention
name
one?
the evil individual whose name I avoid mentioning usually, but I refer to Noam Chomsky or Chomsky. um, who wrote the book Engineering, um, what's it called? Engineering Consent.
Yeah.
Engineering consent. So they engineer their rabbinical consent. They box them into a corner. They present them with certain information, and they get the result they want.
I asked MKs from both sides, Shas and the Haredi parties. I asked one MK from both sides if their respective leaders had actually been shown the 4-page document that was sent.
You're
And the answer
referring
was
to this supposed deal,
deal,
hostage deal, whatever.
hostage deal. And I was told with great authority that the answer was no.
And yet they're for it.
And yet, therefore, what O'Biden said.
There you go.
Okay. So
The point I wanted to elaborate upon, as I said to you before, we're talking about fake Torah and fake rabbis. And I want to say once again, we've been here before. And I'd like to share the screen with you now and with the viewers. What you should be able to see now is something which I've been aware of for a long time, and I suppose many people have. This is a statement by UK Chief Rabbi at that time, Lord Jonathan Sachs, on the release of Gilad Shalit. The date is October the 18th, 2011. This did appear at that time, and it still appears on the internet. Anyone can look it up. Just look up, Shalit, Rabbi Sachs, the Chief Rabbi, Office of the Chief Rabbi, and you'll find it. And let us read together what it says here. It is so. It's almost beyond belief. It says the following: the safe return of Gilad Shalit to his family and to his freedom is a sight Jews around the world have been praying and campaigning for since his capture on the 25th of June 2006. Our prayers have been answered, and we rejoice for and with Gilad and his family. Well, you might think so far so good. At this point, I would already suggest that you begin to be very concerned. But let's read the next paragraph. The concept of pidyon shivuyim, the redemption of captives, is a fundamental mitzvah in Judaism and the sanctity and significance of a single life, one of our highest values. Israel has again shown it is willing to pay a heavy and painful price to uphold one of its most sacred values. And we hope, now listen well, we hope this is a step forward in the pursuit for peace in the Middle East.
God help us.
This is Rabbi Sachs, October 2011. And he continues, every life is precious. That sounds nice and woke and regressive to me. And that is why, because clearly some lives are not precious. I mean, just for example, how many people would say that the life of Adolf Hitler was precious, or Adolf Eichmann, or any other number of evildoers? This is pure humanistic, woke
Tikkun olam.
Gibberish.
It's tikkun.
But this is of course how you get into the good books of those people and guarantee yourself a huge amounts of donations for whatever activity you wish to promote. Every life is precious, and that is why on this day we also remember the victims of terror who have been killed at the hands of many of those released today in the past, as if it's over. That wasn't the past, and it's not going to happen again. When we know, in fact, that the number of Jews killed by people released in that deal in 2011, before October 7th, before Shmini Atzeret, 8 months ago, was over 500, by the way. Those are official Israeli statistics. As well as those Israeli soldiers who remain missing in action. We continue to pray for their safe and speedy return, and that they too will one day soon know what it is to be free. So we are being told here by this great luminary, Rabbi Sachs, that this was a step forward in the pursuit for peace in the Middle East. One can only regret that he is no longer with us in this world to view what was perpetrated by those very people released in that deal by Netanyahu, supported by all those leftists, Jews and non-Jews, who loved to love Rabbi Sachs. And you may have picked up by now that I'm not one of those people.
Could I ask a quick question?
And we're told this is a step forward in the pursuit for peace in the Middle East. That, my friend Jonathan, and whoever's listening, that is false, unauthentic, irrational, amoral, immoral, fake Torah.
Okay, could I ask you a question now? Taking this statement at face value, Why was it, do you think, that Lord Sachs, Jonathan Sachs, Rabbi Sachs, categorically refused to help me?
I suspect that you're about to tell me, but I hardly think that one needs to explain. It's really very obvious because
My life
it was
precious?
not PC from his perspective to do so.
Wasn't my life precious? Wasn't that a matter of pidyon shvuin?
Well, your life and your captivity were not being and your release from such captivity from said captivity were not being promoted by George Soros, by the
No,
Israel Fund, by the B'nai B'rith, and all the other wonderful Jewish organizations that love to love Rabbi Sachs. So therefore, apparently the answer is no. You were not that important.
a friend of mine in Yerushalayim, who is now unfortunately deceased, actually approached him publicly, clasped his hands together as a supplicant, was crying and begged him. He did everything but get on his knees and begged him to help me. And Lord Jonathan Sachs listened, then turned on his heels and walked away.
As I said, a fake rabbi. I'm sorry if some people don't like hearing that, but that is the truth.
You don't have to convince me of that fact because I spent another 20 years in prison after that event where some of my friend begged him to help me. So
I'm not in the least bit surprised, but this text that I read to you now,
it says everything there. It says everything.
What else could you possibly need to know about
But you know
this
what?
person's and all the people who agree with him, that person's perspective on reality, and how much harm such people have done to the Jewish nation?
But you know what? Cut and paste, change the date, and it would be applicable today to those rabbis who are pushing for this deal to be passed.
I'll say more than that. If he were still alive,
He would back
and
it.
this question were brought before him today regarding the possible proposed deal that is perhaps on the table and perhaps not, he would still be in favor, despite everything
100,
that happened,
100%.
because these people never learn from their mistakes. They refuse to recognize the error of their ways. And any claim to speak in the name of Judaism is a sham. They are speaking in the name of post-Christian, that is to say, Western, regressive, uh, woke humanism. And whatever plays well in front of that audience, that is what these people will say.
Correct.
That
So
does not necessarily mean that such a person cannot write a number of books in which there are a number of insights which may even be very profound and very correct.
well,
The two things are not mutually exclusive, but
I
but
I
in general, a person
I
who can misunderstand so profoundly misunderstand the Torah and reality, one should be very, very suspicious of anything that he has to say.
I have read all of Lord Sax's commentary on Tanakh, and I found them to be very insightful and very very well written. Um, However, when he gets into the political realm, say with some of his other books on ethics and morality and things like that, I couldn't make it. I just had to basically put the book down and just say, no, I don't want to go here with him because he was very woke, very regressive, and eloquent, no question.
Yes,
I
no
mean,
question.
I heard his speech in the House of Lords talking about the reappearance of anti-Semitism, particularly in Great Britain, and it was Churchillian. It was magnificent. Listening to it was just it was beautiful until I realized to use a title of a book that recently came out, "The World Loves Dead Jews." And so referencing the Hurban, referencing the Shoah and why we must never forget it and everything else in this modern era, I understood what was going on. He couldn't bring himself to say that the current society, led by the left wing, basically, was laying the groundwork for yet another terrible slaughter of Jews. Couldn't do it. He just kept referencing the Shoah and how we must never let that happen again. Well, how do we not, here it is. How do we not let it happen again? It's like when I go to people and I say, bring the hostages home now, ... Sorry, ... now. Okay, how? Tell me how. And the answer is
the answer is the same as Lord Sax's. Pidyon Shvuyim. It's a great mitzvah. It's a Jewish principle.
And these are people who are so leftist.
And therefore, anything at all may be done.
But they're misusing. And look, we have a principle, and I'm not going to tell you. You should tell me about this. We have a principle that one of the greatest sins somebody can make is a teacher or a rabbi misleading his students or misleading his congregation.
Or misrepresenting the Torah.
Or misrepresenting the Torah.
Twisting and manipulating the sources so that they will say what you wish to say.
Correct. And so when Lord Sachs would talk about political things, or this current crop of hostage families, the leftist crop of hostage families, referencing the notion of Pidyon Shvuin. Excuse me, these people don't know anything about that. The nuances and the halacha relating to that, but they've been told that this is something that you can use. Just like the whole concept of tikkun olam has been appropriated apparently by the left and twisted and turned. My friend Jonathan Neumann wrote a fantastic book on this whole subject, To Heal the World, ? I would recommend it to anybody as a first-rate analysis of how the left has misinterpreted and twisted our fundamental concepts in halacha to suit their own ends. So when these hostage families, or when the Shas party, or when Degel HaTorah, or UTJ, or any of them come up and use the concept of either Pidyon Shvuim or other concepts to justify capitulating to the modern day version of the Nazis in Gaza, it's more than egregious. It's a sin against God himself to do what they're doing. And yes, I'll say that as far as the Shas rabbinical leadership and the Haredi rabbinical leadership that gave their approbation to their respective parties endorsing a capitulation to the Islamo-Nazis in Gaza under the guise of Pidyon Shvuin.
It's a complete aberration and distortion of the truth, because just to put it very plainly, this is not the forum to have an in-depth halachic Talmudic discussion, but it's very simple. All those halachot, all those Jewish laws pertaining to that matter are discussing a situation where you have people such as pirates who used to
kidnap,
traverse the Mediterranean Sea, kidnap people from port cities or off other ships, etc., and then ransom them for money. That was their business model. And if a Jew was captured and these pirates, these kidnappers, professional industrial scale kidnappers, came to a Jewish community somewhere, shall we say, in North Africa or in the land of Israel, and said, well, we have 3 Jewish hostages and we're willing to for you to ransom them. This is what we want. So then the halakha discusses if there is a going rate, and there was, this was a business deal. This was an industry. This was an industry. So there was a going rate. There was a market rate. For a man, a healthy man between the age of 20 and 50, the price was such and such, and for a woman, the price was such and such, etc. I mean, a terrible, unspeakably evil state of affairs, but that was the reality. If they're asking the market price, and you have any possibility of coughing up that money to save this Jew's life, then we are required to do so. It has nothing, however, to do with a war situation, fighting an enemy who is determined to destroy you and your nation and your people and overrun your land.
Use hostages
and where the hostages are simply another form of ammunition, another weapon against us. There's no possible connection or linkage between these concepts. It cannot possibly be squared. It's beyond inane. It's beyond inane, and it's totally disingenuous for anyone to claim otherwise.
I find it amazing that the violence that is routinely used against Haredi protesters has never, ever been used against leftist protesters, ever. And I can back this up because nobody has been able to show me an equivalent situation where innocent people off the street are absolutely, in this case, Haredi protesters are brutalized by the police and security services, whereas leftists who are blocking a main thoroughfare like the Ayalon Expressway
and setting it alight.
And setting it alight. No, that's okay. You can do that. That's fine. That's okay. I just want to point that back.
You're 100%
another side to that.
Of course you are. Yes, of course you are.